Hello everyone, we are going to present our timeline of the real life, evolution and taxonomy. Our team members are Renata Montañez, Ángel Villa, Frida Garcia, Camila López, Sebastián Vázquez, and me, Paola Zúñiga. I hope you enjoyed it and let's begin. Before we start, I'll introduce you the essential keywords that we use in our timelines. First, we have the theory that explains something that happened in the natural world. Then origin, that is the birth, the beginning, the starting point. Ontology is the branch that studies the nature of existence or being as such. The qualisence is the union of two or more materials in one single body. Evolution, a series of natural processes that contribute to transform the genetic characteristics of the species in successive generations. Natural selection, a phenomenon of evolution that the condition of an environment favor or hinder the survival of organisms. Taxonomy, the science that deals with the principles and the methods and purpose of the classification of the groups of animals and vegetables. Domain, it is a category taxonomy used in the system of biological classification above the kingdom and superkingdoms. The three domains are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya.
Hello, my name is Renata Montañez, and I'm going to talk about the origin of the universe or the Big Bang Theory. So, first of all, what is the Big Bang Theory? The Big Bang Theory is the leading explanation about how the universe began. It says the universe as we know it started with a small singularity, then inflated over the next 13.8 billion years to the cosmos that we know today. So now I'm going to explain you the Big Bang Theory phases. Number 1. Boiling soap with electrons, quarks and other elementary particles. Space cools off rapidly, quarks form protons and neutrons. Second, universe, superhot fog. Heated protons and electrons hinder the emission of light. Light elements create like deuterium, lithium, and helium. The third one, protons, electrons, neutrons combine and forms atoms, primarily hydrogen and helium atoms. Fourth one, galaxy formation era. Hydrogens and helium atoms begin to form giant clouds that will become galaxies and stars. And the last one, first dying stars produce heavy elements which turn into new stars and planet Sun. 4.6 billion years old. Solar system 4.5 billion years old. And the Milky Way 13.2 billion years old. Thank you very much.
So, I'm going to talk about the origin of life and the chemical evolution. So, the first is Jean Baptiste de Lamarck. He thought that from microbes descending through continuous modifications all the plant and animal species that inhabit the world. Then we have Louis Pasteur. He designed an experiment in which he demonstrated that microbes didn't appear through spontaneous generation. Then the other one is Alexander Ivanovich Oparin. He proposed that life on Earth had originated in a primary atmosphere that was different from our present atmosphere, which is rich in oxygen, and that the first living beings, unicellular and anaerobic microbes, must have risen starting from inorganic matter which transformed by a process of chemical evolution. Then we have Harold Urey and Stanley Miller. They found that organic molecules could be spontaneously produced under reducing conditions thought to resemble those of early Earth. They proved this by an experiment. And finally, we have Joan Oro. He proposed that organic molecules in meteorites form at the same time on Earth and in these bodies during the first stage of the formation of solar system.
Hi, my name is Angel Villa and I'm going to explain you the biological evolution that the Earth passed through. The first stage of the Earth, it was the Hadean. It went through 4,450 through 4,000. The Earth in the solar system originated. The crust of Earth is consolidated. Its primitive atmosphere is formed and reductive and anoxic, and the first seas and lakes are created. This means that basically everything was starting to appear like lakes and seas. The second stage of the Earth was the Archean. It goes through 4,000 to 2,500. And this is the end of large falling and most ancient sedimentary rocks. And this means that the rocks that were falling and crashed into the earth were disappearing, and conditions appear for the rising of primordial soup and the world of RNA, the region of life. For the first time, abnormal amounts of carbon 13 isotopes appear, which is an exclusive component of living beings. The third stage was the Proterozoic, and the accumulation of gaseous oxygen in the atmosphere. Large marine deposits of iron are formed, and the ozone layer is formed. This means that oxygen in the atmosphere starts to be produced, and first breathing organisms appear. The third stage is the Proterozoic. The diversification of eukaryote lineages, appearance of multicellularity in algae, and their diversification. And this stage also can be well known as the separation of the lineage that gave rise to animal and fungi kingdoms, and most ancient fossils evidence of animals. This means that animals start to appear and living things are living on Earth. The fourth is the Phanerozoic, and it's the explosion of the Cambric. And the Cambric means origin and diversification of almost all lineages of modern animals. Modern animals start to appear, and basically everything on Earth is rising. The fifth age is the Phanerozoic. Is the same one, but it can be classified in different stages. This is where reptiles appear. Large swampy forests of gymnosperms and arborescent ferns cover the north of the planet. The supercontinent Pangea is formed. This means that a huge amount of Earth is on the sea. This is also the origin of dinosaurs. At the end of the period occurs the largest massive extinction in the history of life on Earth, due to a period of world volcanism, and the Mesozoic is the large aquatic reptiles appear. Dinosaurs and their relatives, crocodiles, diversify. Turtles and sharks appear. This is where we can see the most modern but also ancient animals. The Jurassic period dominated by dinosaurs. Like this is the period where were the most dinosaurs on Earth. Large subtropical forest of conifers, ferns, and cycads. Small mammals similar to rodents. In Cretaceous is the supercontinent Pangea fragments. This means that the large piece of Earth that was floating on the sea was separated into different, well, continents that we know. And we have also the end of period takes place in the extinction of large dinosaurs and large reptiles and other groups, possibly by a meteorite and intense volcanism. And the Cenozoic, the continents reach a configuration similar to the current one and diversification of all mammal and bird orders. This is also where the continents that we know are forming and starting to form. And the Quaternary, a succession and diversification of species of the human family appears. At the end of the period, the Homo sapiens species appears and distributes throughout the whole planet as it is diversifies. In Europe, it genetically integrates with the species Homo neanderthalensis. The last regional glaciation occurs. Humans domesticate plants and animals. Great civilizations appear in the current world. This means that the humans is starting to appear with the species of the Homo sapiens, and we start to distribute and do different things that the Asian people didn't do. This is all for the biological evolution. Thank you.
Evolution history. Evidences of evolution. It all started 3.8 billion years ago. This is the most accurate guess that scientists have to when did life on Earth begin. Then, from 3.5 to 3.84 billion years ago, was when the oldest fossils of single cell organisms date to this time. Single cell organisms may have been feeding of methane. Also, fossil microbes date to this time. Then, from 2.4 to 2.15 billion years ago, the Great Oxidation event happened. The Great Oxidation was an event where poisonous waste produced by photosynthetic cyanobacteria started to build up in the atmosphere. Also, the first fossils of evidences of cyanobacteria and photosynthesis date to this time. From 900 to 800 million years ago, the first multicellular life developed around this time, and it underwent its first splits. After that, in 630 to 575 million years ago, some animals developed bilateral symmetry. Bilateral symmetry is when an animal can be split into two symmetrical halves, and bilateral symmetrical animals developed a profound evolutionary split where they divided into the protostomes and the deuterostomes. From 397 to 250 million years ago, the first four-legged animals, also known as tetrapods, evolved from the intermediate species. Also, the Pelaicirus was the first major group of synapsid animals that dominated the land. From 180 to 85 million years ago, the early mammal population developed its first split. The monotremes that were a group of mammals that laid eggs. Then the placental mammals splitted from their cousins, the marsupials. And finally, from 63 to 6 million years ago, was when the primates splitted into two groups known as the haplorhines, the wet-nosed primates, and the stepsorhines, the dry-nosed primates. Also, apes splitted from the old world monkeys, Then gorillas branched off from the great apes. Finally, humans diverged from their closest relatives, the chimpanzees, and bonobos.
My topic is evolution of the theories. What is evolution? Evolution is the origin and evolution of the life, of the biodiversity, as well as the universe itself. They are two of the most recent and novel aspects of the scientific development. There are five theories. The first one is the theories of the origin of the universe. This is began in science, the Copernic revolutions in 16th century, when the universe went from the beginning exclusive of our solar systems. The second one is the Big Bang theory. This theory was suggested in 1927 by Georges Lemaître. And the third one is the theory of the oscillation or pulsation of the universe. This is in 1922 by Alexander Friedman, also derived and his part of the logical consequence of the general theory. The fourth is the theory of the centenary states. This theory is elaborated in 1948 by Fred Hale, Herman, and Thomas Gates, who were creators of the Big Bang. The last one is the theory of the inflammatory states. This theory was proposed in 1981. Alan Hughes, this is an alternative theory to the Big Bang, but an addiction in solved some of these problems.
Now I am going to talk about the taxonomy in the system of classification of living beings. Taxonomy is the most ancient discipline of biological science, and it's concentrated on describing the species of living beings to know its homologous characters and use them to be able to classify them in hierarchical groups in which they establish phylogenetic relationships. Aristoteles ordered the diversity of known animals into large groups: animals with red blood and animals without red blood. Landmarks based on the presence or absence of a spinal column and cranium, vertebrates with red blood and invertebrates with blood of other color. In the Middle Ages, the classifications of animals and plants had a practical or utilitarian bias and was based on its use or some very evident characteristic. Linnaeus, in the book Systema Naturae, determined the species would be ordered in hierarchical or classification taxonomic categories. That these categories in decreasing direction were the kingdom, the class, the order, the gender, and the species. For the classification alignments, I am going to tell you an example that is of the human species, the Homo sapiens. The kingdom, Animalia, the great group that contains all the animals. The phylum, the groups of animals with an embryonic structure or support of the body called notochord. Class, Mammalia, the subgroups of vertebrates that are mammals. Order, Primates, the groups of monkeys. Family, Hominidae, the great human family. Genus, Homo, exclusive group in which enters the species of human. The species, Sapiens, outstanding characteristic which identifies it as all. Robert Whittaker documented the five kingdoms that were a wide and diverse subgroup of species, some microscopic and others microscopic, including some that were unicellular, with strange forms and not photosynthesizing of gray and obscure colors, which remained taxonomically located between the plants, were not plants but fungi. The five kingdoms were Monera or bacteria, Protista or Protoxista, Plantae, fungi, and Animalia. Caraboos studied the sequence of nucleotides of genes originating from the diversity of species representing all the kingdoms. He specifically studied the genes of the RNA that are found in the ribosomes because he was sure that the synthesis of protein was so ancient and indispensable among living beings. He also declared the separation of bacteria of his newly discovered archaea and the existence of a new taxonomic category superior to that of kingdom the domain. That was the bacteria that has spiral sheet, green filamentous bacteria, and gram positive. Then the archaea that pronounces archaea, which means ancient. It has methanogens, halophiles, thermophiles, dermoacid sulfiles, and similars, and eukarya. One, this one contains all that begins with nucleate cells, also called eukaryotic, protista, plants, animals, and fungi. Lynn Margulis and Caroline Schwartz follow with the system of classification of the five kingdoms, adding the two superkingdoms and two bacterial subkingdoms. One superkingdom is the prokaryote, with the kingdom bacteria and subkingdoms eubacteria and archaeobacteria. The other superkingdom is eukaryote, with the kingdoms prototista, plantae, fungi, and animalia. In conclusion, we can say that scientific research and explanation have been given a lot of importance in order to understand the origin of the universe and evolution in the world. Because a lot of people like scientists, the taxonomists, ontologists, and more of them that have involved in the search for answers have been taking several years for of study, experience, and practice by taking up the theories and information from other people as well as questioning their, their own results and giving us more information and new to understand more about the life.